Wow, 200 reviews. So much for me never sticking with long-term projects, huh? Well, I wanted to make number 200 special, and many of you might be thinking I'm going to be choosing a really crappy game. Well, you'd be wrong. I'm reviewing Driver San Francisco for number 200 because, honestly, I really enjoyed the hell out of this game, and I've been wanting to review it for a very long time. If you've never played any of the Driver games, here's the basics. You play as an undercover cop named John Tanner. He has exceptional driving skills, and although the games were fairly open world and tried to clone GTA a bit, they focused more on the driving aspects of the game, and were a lot more realistic in terms of physics. The stories lead into each other from game to game, at least for the most part, but it's never required to play each in order, as each one has its own perfectly functioning plot. Driver San Francisco is no exception to prior games in the series. You still play as Tanner, driving around with his partner Jones. Unlike the last few previous games, Tanner doesn't exactly exit his car and walk around San Francisco, which I can't complain about too much given the stiffness of a lot of the previous game's walking controls. Instead, this is how it works. In the first mission of the game, the main bad guy of the Driver series, Jericho, busts out of jail and Tanner gives chase. Eventually, Jericho leads Tanner into an alley. Tanner and Jones get T-boned by a large rig, and Tanner is knocked unconscious. Yeah, this is another one of those "this whole game is a dream" deals, but at least the game doesn't even attempt to hide it. It's made very clear from the beginning that this is the case. Tanner doesn't realize it till the very end of the game. In any case, Tanner is driving around thinking everything is okay other than a few bruises, but then finds out that he can shift, or leave his body and enter someone else's, much like a simple ghostly possession. This shift mechanic is the main selling point of the game. Shifting is done easily, and you're going to be forced to do it a lot. To shift, you just press X at any time. Tanner will enter a bird's eye view of the city, and you can move around trying to find another vehicle to enter. After you play a few chapters of the story, the shift will be upgraded to allow you to zoom out even further to allow you to travel the city even quicker than before. When you hover the cursor over a vehicle, its stats will show up, along with any mission that will be accompanied by it, denoted by the icons. If that's the vehicle you want, you press X again, and you'll jump right in. If there's a mission, you'll see a small exchange between the driver and passenger, and then you can press X again to begin the mission. If you want to jump out, you just press X again to repeat the procedure. It's extremely simple to learn and use, which is good for the amount of time you'll be needing to use it. The opening chapters of the game start off as a sort of tutorial, teaching you about shift and the things you can actually do with it. All in all though, you're still going to need to advance the story, in which you actually take control of Tanner himself and his iconic Dodge Challenger, or sometimes blocked from shifting. Shifting isn't the only superpower that Tanner obtains in his comatose state. You'll eventually be able to use L1 to ram opponents. It's not necessary often, but it can be helpful when trying to do more damage when rear-ending vehicles that you're trying to damage. It can also be used to pile on extra damage when making a head-on collision, as obviously that's going to be the way to do the most damage to your opposing vehicles. The second and more useful ability is the method of boosting. This acts as a sort of refillable nitro, and can propel your car forward much faster than simply stepping on the gas. You'll be using this boost often, as you can catch up with cars that are way out of your reach much easier than simply trying to drive without this boost. Both the ram and boost abilities use up the boost bar in the bottom left side of the screen. It will replenish itself steadily on its own, so you don't have to be real stingy with its use. In addition to this bar, each car you drive also has a health meter, which is the one underneath the speedometer on the bottom right corner of the HUD. If a car is destroyed, you are forced to shift into a new one. There are a few missions where you cannot wreck the vehicle you start in, so you do need to keep that in mind. Other than that, you can usually drive as recklessly as you want. And just in case you feel bad, no one ever actually dies in the game. If you wreck a car, any passenger would just be bewildered. As you're driving, any pedestrians will move out of your way right before you hit them. So yeah, this isn't GTA. You won't be running people over and crunching bones. So as you're driving around and causing general roadside mayhem, you'll be earning willpower, or WP. Think of this as your experience. Everything you could possibly think of earns you willpower. Driving fast, hitting air, using turbo, near misses, 180 or 360 degree turns, completing objectives. Hell, every 20 minutes you get a standard deposit of willpower, just to ensure you're not completely broke. This willpower is used to upgrade Tanner's abilities and buy new vehicles to use in free roam or challenges. You may run out of willpower when going on spending sprees, but at least you'll never worry about not getting any more. It adds up quickly, even when just messing around on the streets. So when shifting, you'll notice that there's several different markers on the map. Anything in yellow is your main missions. In order to progress the story, you must start the missions with the T icon for Tanner, but often this will be locked until you complete some of the other yellow icon missions. This is considered in the game as helping out the city. You'll shift into a character and assist them in whatever they are trying to do that day. Some of these are fairly entertaining, like the street races where the passenger keeps getting the driver into trouble by signing up for these races, Or the mission where some guy gets bit by a spider and is losing consciousness fast. He says some out there things and I almost crashed several times because I was laughing. In addition to the yellow markers, you'll also have blue ones. These are just bonus events that you can complete for willpower, and oftentimes allow you to unlock a car for purchase in one of the many garages around the city. These are not required in order to complete the game, but of course they are a good idea, especially if you're aiming for that 100% completion trophy. These blue challenges are usually just a rehashing of a main story mission, like another sprint race, destruction race, vehicle protection event, or car destruction. The third thing to look out for are the dares, denoted by another blue icon, but one that's smaller than the other challenges. These are essentially real-time challenges, and often take no more than a few seconds to complete. These dares feature simple tasks like driving above a certain speed limit, driving in oncoming traffic for a certain amount of time, doing a drift for a specified distance, and getting a certain amount of hang time. Again, simple stuff. You can switch which dare you're working on at any time just by selecting it, but if you start a challenge or mission, the dare will be considered failed and you'll have to restart it again. If you fail a dare, it's not gone forever. In fact, if it's one you can just flat out fail, like if it's timed, if you're still driving around in free mode, you can just press square to restart it, and it'll begin right where you're at that precise moment. There's actually no need to physically hunt down a dare's starting position unless you had started another challenge or mission. Maybe you've noticed, right? Or maybe you haven't. But there are a lot of vehicles in this game. 140 to be exact, and all are real-world licensed vehicles. Each one of them can be purchased at a garage, although this is just if you want to easily complete a challenge in them or drive around freely in it. When you start a challenge from Shift, you'll start in whatever vehicle you last chose from a garage. If you drive to a marker and begin it that way though, you'll start it in the vehicle you're currently in. But don't fret, because you can literally shift into any vehicle that you find in the world. There are very few exceptions to this rule, like not being able to shift into a bad guy's car. So if you see a Lamborghini driving along and you're a crappy little Volt, by all means, you can shift. You can also notice that each car has varying stats. These stats are pretty self-explanatory, and I don't really think I need to get into them. If you fancy getting a peek inside the car, you can change the camera with Select. Every single car in the game has what I would assume to be an accurate dashboard, fully viewable from Tanner's driver's seat. This is pretty freaking sweet, I must say. It's not like Gran Turismo 5, where there's generic dashboards for many of the cars. Every vehicle in Drivers San Francisco has its own inside. It really shows the level of detail that the developers put into the game. The gameplay is extremely smooth, whether you're shifting around various cars at once or just transitioning from a challenge to a mission. Driving around with the massive amount of cars on the screen, I found no lag at all, which is pretty damn impressive, considering that I saw a bit of loading issues when playing GTA 5. Even when you zoom out to the final level in the bird's eye view, everything chugs along seamlessly. It's all very cool and not something I was expecting. The story is fairly engaging, but I will admit that it probably won't appeal to everyone. Again, it's not a secret that Tanner is dreaming, as the game will show you scenes of Jones sitting with Tanner in the hospital. Tanner, on the other hand, doesn't realize he's asleep, so he thinks that everything he's doing in the game is actually happening. I won't spoil the actual workings of how everything meshes together, but I will say that the ending is pretty satisfying. I will also say that there's a mission near the end that can be pretty difficult, just because you're chasing Jericho and he's literally launching cars at you. It's awesome at first, until you have to repeat a mission a dozen times because an airborne tanker just took out your muscle car. It's a very minor nitpick, but I didn't particularly enjoy the soundtrack of the game. Thankfully, you can press down on the directional pad to pause it, but it consists primarily of oldies, funk, and very select few modernistic indie songs. In fact, the only band that I heard that I actually know of is Queens of the Stone Age. Maybe there's more in the large list, but it just wasn't my type of music. But hey, Tanner does drive around in that Challenger, so maybe he prefers the older music. Wouldn't surprise me any. That's really all I have for Driver San Francisco. If you like open world driving games, this one should be in your collection, as it is really super fun. Sure, it's a bit on the easier side until about the final missions, but overall it's extremely entertaining and gorgeous to look at. It's also a refreshing change of pace from the previous games. I've only really played Drivers 1 through 3 prior to this, and though I enjoyed 3 a bit, I will say it really wasn't one of the best open world games I had ever played. I've only touched on parallel lines for a few missions, but I didn't care for that one either. So this reboot was really something I felt was necessary for the series. Give it a shot, especially if you want to drive a McLaren at 240 miles an hour over a car carrier in first-person view. Final score? 10 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.